Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of A Bigger Bite, where we take a deeper dive into some of the biggest films of the year. I am your host, Matt Thomas, and today joining me on the panel is this bite-sized crew featuring Katie, Paige, and Amaru. This is just a podcast where we will be going over in detail some of these, a bigger bite actually, of these reviews and whatnot to let people expand more on their thoughts on films and give you a more in-depth look and feeling into how they feel and why. So without further ado, let's get this thing rolling. And the first film in this bigger bite series is Dune Part 2. We're going to start with ladies first. Katie, what are your feelings on Dune Part 2?
I absolutely loved it. 5 stars visually, the sound, the acting, everything. I adored it. It was just such a event film, a real standout blockbuster. I don't have enough good things to say about it. I loved it.
Paige, how are you feeling about Dune Part 2?
I mean, definitely echo what Katie says. I mean, this movie is one for the ages. I think when we look back at cinema in the next 50 years, this film will definitely be brought up as such a masterpiece, and not only in storytelling, but like Katie said, the visuals and this the ensemble, everything, and the score, everything. This film has everything going for it. And honestly, I think it's one of the best sci-fi adaptations to ever grace the silver screen.
Amarú, your thoughts?
My thoughts is one, peek behind the curtain. This is not the first video that we've recorded, so you're going to see future videos because we're going to see future videos where I give him shit any point at any time and any day. We're also doing this for the lead up to the Oscars. So this first one is the first of many that we're getting to up to the Oscars before we go past those into any movie. I love doing the job for him. Brothers here, we're going to give each other shit. I absolutely love the fact that you served that up for me. Thank you.
Can't wait. Can't wait for my Cavs to meet you Knicks this Friday since you won't be that petty.
But anyway, on the Dune Part 2, one, Denis Villeneuve not getting Best Director. If he does not get nominated for Best Director for Dune Messiah, Oscars, why are you not giving people the legacy nominations and wins when they deserve it? For Dune Part 2, here's the thing with Dune for me, though. I saw it earlier in the year. I saw it in the theaters. It was very long, and I felt the length. And I loved it when I got out of it, but I did not go back to it for probably 6 to 7 months, and I honestly was like, I don't remember much. So it was a lot lower on my list than a good number of movies. Deadpool and Wolverine was over it. Civil War was over it because it was more memorable. And then I finally, I think in the last month or so, went back and watched it, and it jumped 5-6 spots. That movie, Dune Part 2, is an epic. It is an extreme epic. But what makes it even better is the performances in it. Zendaya is absolutely incredible. Timothée Chalamet is a very, very great actor with a lot of range. But it's the people around him that bring stuff out of him that makes me really love this ensemble. And at any point that I can go, Lisa Lagayin, because Javier Bardem is absolutely amazing, I will do so. I steady want to compare or hear people's comparisons between this and Lord of the Rings, because this will never go over Lord of the Rings to me. But damn, if this is not the closest thing to a fantasy sci-fi epic in world building that could maybe match it.
I mean, totally. But also, you got to admit, though, the feat that Denis Villeneuve had to do is that he had this large book that he had the decision to either condense it into one story like David Lynch did, or to separate it into 2 parts. And I've got to say, not only was that a smart business move on Warner Brothers end to do that, but I think it was a smart move for the story as well to expand it into 2 parts, because one, we got the first one is more of the setup of the world building and the atmosphere that we have, and then 2 just goes right into the mayhem and not only takes some liberties with some changes that it does to the book, but it also enhances the story, I think, which is a huge bonus in my eyes. I haven't read the book, but from what I hear. I'll fuck note it at some point.
So personally, although Rue's like, I didn't remember for the first 7 months or after 7 months having not seen it, I saw that thing 5 times in theaters, and I remember it almost in its entirety. It stayed in my top 3 all year. Even like films I liked above it initially when it came to my final list got moved down because I refused to move Dune down because I just thought back to the epic scope of it, all the technical aspects that make it such a great film on top of the performances. As Rue called him, Timothée Chalamet. I want to delve into his performance a little bit more with the rest of you. This time I'll go with Paige. Paige, your thoughts on Mr. Chalamet? Or Chalamet.
Oh, Timothée Chalamet. I mean, no, this to me, this was the first performance we actually got to see him like be a man. Like Timmy showed us that like he had some cojones like hidden up there that just none of us knew about. I mean, what he's able to bring like with his presence, and like you said, like in the first one, like he's like a young adult, and you see him in this part 2 like grow into this like stern. I don't want to say like the savior, well, of what he thinks is, because he's fighting it so much, and what he's able to bring with that like compelling nuance of I don't want to be this person because what could maybe happen, and then like fighting it for so long, and then to witness him like caving into the pressures, kind of in a sense.
Paige, you could say it. He was the white savior. He was the white.
Yes,
Okay, I almost said white savior, and I was like, I don't want to.
He's the white savior.
That is something a lot of us have said. This is literally he's the white savior in an anti-white savior film.
Yeah.
Like that's his role, is to be, hey, I don't want to be the white savior. Well, you're gonna be the white savior whether you like it or not. Even though technically I guess you could say his character is mixed. He's just very pale skinned. But yeah, Katie, your thoughts on Mr. Chalamet?
I think not only is he like a really strong performer, but I think it's really smart casting because he's kind of gonna age up a little bit with these films, and we're gonna see him mature in real life. And I think that it was smart to cast him because a lot of people doubted his ability to fill the boots of this role, which are massive, but he did so well. And I think he showed a lot of people that, like you said, Paige, he has the cojones to do that. And yeah, he's doing incredibly well. And it was powerful. He was a man. Like you said, Paige, like totally, yeah, I really enjoyed him.
The questions I have, because I think he was really good, but what do you all feel about in a specific thing? I know, again, I'm going to keep referring to the first time I watched it to the second time I watched it, but for both times, the one part of his performance that I kind of felt was like, did I miss something? Was that transition from reluctance to absolute, like, no, I'm the shit and I'm the guy that's going to lead. Like, for one, did y'all see that or did y'all feel that as much? Because each time I kind of missed that I kind of felt like, oh, he drank the worm piss. Now I'm the man. Instead of like a natural progression to that. I'll leave it at that first. Yeah.
I still feel like that even after he drinks the worm piss, he's still reluctant. He's just like, I'm doing this because I have to, not because I'm the man. I realize I'm the man, but I'm not out here like I'm the man. I'm just doing this because I have no other choice. This is what's been put before me, and this is the only way things can go as need be.
Well, I kind of want to push back because like that scene in the temple where he's like telling people, I know about you, and you're gonna follow me. That doesn't feel like reluctance to me. Maybe a little later when he's talking to Zendaya, possibly, but like that scene in particular was where I go, I love your performance, but where was that? Are we supposed to accept that immediate transition then and there? Because I was taken by surprise by that.
Well, I think like the whole part 2 is literally the majority of the film is him like pushing back, resisting, like, I don't want to do this because of his visions that he's had that like something's bad going to happen. But I think it came to that breaking point when the Harkonnens were like trying to fight back against him, that he realized, I think, that the Fremen like needed the leader, and that the only way for them to all follow him is for him to actually be like the prophecy, I guess. So like he had to like tremble to the will and just like go full blast into it, I guess, kind of in a sense. But like what Matt said though, like I don't think he was like looking like I'm the man, but I think he was looking like, no, I after drinking the worm piss that like I do have the power, and you guys need to follow me because I can see what's going to happen. And if you don't, this is what's going to happen. Like pretty much just like listen up, bitches, or you're all gonna be fucked. I don't know. Did that help a little bit?
Yeah, and then the other thing is, like, I firmly believe, as great as his performance is, he is probably has a lesser performance than the majority of the main cast. Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Zendaya, Austin Butler, like those are the people who are like really, really in the film. I feel like they did I'm not gonna say much, but he is falling behind all of them in this performance. And I don't know. And again, I liked it. I don't know if that was a strength for him or if that was something that is like, it's great, but you're the leader. So why am I thinking about everybody else before I think about you?
I think that's also has to do with the character of Paul Atreides, because just in general, he's a character who he doesn't want to be the leader. So you're going to see all these other people around him push forward. And I think that's part of this story in general. I think that's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I feel like he's kind of more ambiguous than it lets on, and that his potential to make negative things happen is a lot greater. And I think there's more manipulation going on than we realize. So I feel like it's meant to be more ambiguous, and I wouldn't say he's reserved, but I think it's meant to surprise us when he does have those outbursts and he does kind of make everyone jump back. I think that's intentional. I'm not entirely sure, but for me at least, it felt like it was meant to surprise us and shock us when it needs to.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And I think that is like kind of what I think Denis was going for, was like these moments are going to hit you so hard because you did not expect him to like take that turn, kind of in a sense.
That help you a little bit, Rue?
Yeah. I love to have those kind of conversations just because, like, I think of Dune. The only reason I think of Timothy is because he's Paul, not because of his performance, because he's out there. But I think of everybody else before I think of him.
No, that's totally fair. Speaking of those other performances, I want to hear from each of you, and we'll start with Rue too. Out of the other performances, who would you have as your top performance?
So I would have to give it as a tie because they fill two roles between Zendaya and Javier Bardem. Javier Bardem, while you could like easily throw him away as like low-key the comic relief, that bit of levity that he brings in is rooted in his religious fervor, and like the like you really believe every aspect of him when he says, "I don't care if you believe, I believe." So like all that conflict with that and the conflict between his dramatic stakes and the comedic stakes really put him in a place that's kind of separate from the rest of the cast, but somebody you need in this long ass movie. But I think Zendaya, for me, if I have to pick, I think Zendaya is the best because I think a lot of people would argue that maybe her role in Challengers was a better performance. I think her role here is a harder performance.
Yes.
Because I think she needs to do what Timothy does, where she has to be a little bit more reserved. She has to kind of play the background, but you feel her presence the entire time with just the look on her face and the small little things that she puts in her intonations. Like when Paul switched up on her and that black woman, you motherfucker look that she gives him. I felt that. I felt that deep in my soul. And I was just like, yes, Zendaya, thank you.
Katie, how about you? Who's your acting MVP?
I think obviously everyone's incredible, but Rebecca Ferguson, I think, because she like terrified me. Like she's so genuinely threatening and sinister. I love that kind of, she's obviously a loving mother and she cares, but at one point she goes cold, and like the difference in her facial expressions and just her steely look, I think is incredible. So I think Rebecca Ferguson.
Paige.
I mean, they're all fabulous. I mean, I think obviously my favorite is Timmy, just because he is like the leading man in it, but everyone else around him is like building him up, and that's what like an ensemble does. and especially in this film does so well. But I think I'd have to go with like Rue on this one with Zendaya and Javier, because it's really interesting that the two of them are on the completely different end of the spectrum. So I guess when it comes to like the religious like base like theme that's kind of going on in the film, like Javier is so much for the prophecy and believes in like this, like he is the Messiah, and how Chani, aka Zendaya, is like, no, like pretty much people just make these prophecies up so that people will believe in something, and she's not for that. So they're what I like most about them is that they're on like the complete ends of the spectrum on the belief of the prophecy, even though they're both like Fremen, which I thought was really fascinating. And I mean, like Rue said, like the comedic timing with Javier was amazing. Like I did not expect that at all. Like from him to like be able to like throw into this performance, and I giggled quite a few times every time he spoke. So
I'll say a name that nobody's mentioned, and it's just me personally, because I feel like the film takes a tonal shift once they enter the screen. But that's Austin.
Oh no, okay, all right. I thought you were gonna say, I forgot about Austin Butler. It was weird. I thought you were gonna say Josh Brolin for a second, because he also was very
good. He's very good. And
we got a bunch of them. We got Christopher Walken with the more cowbells.
Florence Pugh's in the film early on, but like this is someone who we didn't get to spend as much time with as we did other characters. But the film just takes a tonal shift from when you get from when you're on whatever planet the heart or whatever planet the Harkonnens are on, and you have him in that costume.
Right.
Thank you.
What is it called?
Giddy Prime.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you just hit him in the Colosseum, taking out what he thinks is the last of the Atreides, and then being given the lordship over Arrakis, and then hunting that. Like before, you had his cousin Dave Bautista's character, who's the name is slipping right now, who just was failing nonstop, and he comes in.
Rabast, I think.
Yeah, and he comes in. And he just lays, like, he doesn't care. He lays waste. He actually makes it a challenge for the Fremen. And just that fight between him and Atreides towards the end of it was awesome. So,
Raban before somebody kills me.
Yeah.
Not Rabas.
Listen, hey, we all make mistakes. We're human. But yeah, Austin Butler. And it was that dude's got some interesting accents. That's all I got to say about that. But I want to dive into this is a best. You're good. I want to dive into what a lot of people were. Rue hinted at it earlier on, but how Denis Villeneuve and his amazing directorial efforts were not recognized for this film or the first film. And Rue, since you brought up the subject initially, I'm going to let you go first for this.
So yeah, I low key. Actually, I got to think through it, because I was going to say low-key think that the snub was more egregious last year than it was this year. Basically only because of who got nominated. I'm trying to like look up and just double check. I know who will be replaced. It's pretty fucking easy according to a lot of people.
2021?
From this year. From this year. I know.
So you have Sean Baker, Brady Corbet, James Mangold, Jacques Audiard, and Coralie Fairget.
I got two right there that I would have replaced them with. James Mangold and the guy that directed Amelia Perez. Bang, boom, done.
You'll find out later, I actually like that movie. So like James Mangold for sure for me. But there was also a very, very long, a pretty good damn list of directors this year that deserved to be in there. Ramel Ross for one, with Nickel Boys. Again, another video down the road. For me, however, I think I think in 2021, I think he definitely got snubbed. I just felt it a little bit more, where this year he had a little bit more competition. But I do believe he did a much better job on this one, both visually, pacing-wise, storytelling. And I was a little upset that he got this, but I think at the moment, again, it's going to come down to Messiah, and I can't help but not compare it to the fact to Lord of the Rings. and Peter Jackson kind of getting the same kind of trajectory where you're getting a one nomination and one maybe win for an entire franchise trilogy. And I'm going to say, hopefully that cures all here. Because I kind of felt the tea leaves towards the end where I was like, this pool of nominees is much harder to get into for a multitude of reasons than it was last time.
See, though, like but to me, like, I don't think he just like one. I feel like we need to see Dune Messiah before we decide he deserves like an honorary like nomination. But like, I'm sorry, like I said this at the beginning of the video, though, like go back 50 years from now, people are going to look at like Dune Part 2 as like one of like cinematics like masterpieces. Like what Denis able to do with like the visual like spectacle, the ensemble, I know like the cinematography isn't him, but like the team that he was able to ensemble to get this like thing to come together so perfectly. To me, it was just like brilliant. And I mean, Marty Scorsese like says it best, like this is cinema, and I just don't know what the rest of the Academy was thinking when they were filling out their ballot this year, because the first one I think was nominated for 11.
So Paige, just keep in mind how the Academy works. Your part of the Academy is who nominates it. So like directors are who nominates directors.
I know, but to me that's insane though. Like I'm starting to think the directors just don't like Denis. I don't know. At least the BAFTAs fucking nominated him. Like, goddamn. Like, what's up with the U.S. ballot for the directors? I don't get it. I don't know.
Well, Rue, I want to go back to what you said because I did pull up the list from the year that Denis was nominated or was not nominated for Dune Part 1, which is actually 2022. And those films included Jane Campion for Power of the Dogs, Kenneth Branagh for Belfast, Rizuki Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, PTA for Licorice Pizza, and West Side Story Steven Spielberg.
So only two of those movies, Power of the Dog, even though I hated it, Jane Campion directed the hell out of it, and West Side Story are the two that I feel like are up there with Dune Part 1 directing wise for me.
Interesting. I mean, I liked Belfast and I loved Licorice Pizza, even though it is problematic. So, but I didn't see Drive My Car, so I can't speak on it.
I don't know, but don't you guys think it's crazy though that the first film was nominated for like 11 nominations, and then this one only gets 6? And I think it is a way better film. I think
5.
It only got nominated for 5 this time. Like, I don't know. For me, Dune Part 1 walked so that Dune Part 2 could run. And the fact that the Academy just like brushed it aside just because it's like a sequel, even though technically it is the second half to the story. Like, you can literally watch 1 and 2 back to back and it's a cohesive story because Part 2 starts off right where Part 1 ended. I don't know.
So, Paige, I will say this: you have to remember stuff like costume design, where there's not much changing there. Was where it was nominated the first time.
It's still amazing,
but it's the Academy's like we nominated it before. There's not a lot of new there. It's just reusing of the same stuff. Just like music, they for the score they disqualified the score because it's just reusing a lot of the majority of the same themes. So like you say, how could the Academy not nominate? But it's just because it is a sequel that is technically the same story. So you're answering your question in your question. It is the same story. Nothing much has changed. So why are we going to nominate it twice when we already nominated it once? You can argue that the nominations of Dune continue on to Dune Part 2 outside of the technical nominations that it got this time.
I guess I get it with the technical aspect of it, but like the Part 1 is more of just like a world building setup type of film, and like Part 2 like takes on some like heavy themes like with fate and destiny and the dangers of what power can like.
But Paige, again, you're answering your question because that is story. What changed the story? What did it get nominated for? Best Picture.
But this time around, it didn't get nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. And I think it adapts the second half of the book way better than like the first half.
And that's totally fair. But again,
I don't know. I honestly think because this movie came out in March is what's hurting its chances right now.
No,
And I think if this movie came out in November, I think a lot more of the Academy voters and just people in general, I think would have been talking about this film more than it coming out in March. I really do think it kind of hurt it, even though it did gangbusters at the box office, but still. I don't know
think
what
people
do you
forgot how mesmerized they were when it very first came out. I think there's definitely some like recency bias at play. I don't know how much, but it just seems staggering for it not to get the recognition. So that there has to be a reason. So it could be that.
I mean, look real quick. You brought up adapted screenplay. You had Complete Unknown nominated because it's from a book. The Conclave, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, Sing Sing. The only one I'd potentially move out of it would be Emilia Perez. And again,
I wouldn't do that. I would get rid of Complete Unknown.
I would get rid of both of them. So and slide in Dune Part 2.
So you mentioned the other movie because I was trying to figure out because Dune Part 2 was right there for me for like 5, 6 or being nominated. I think that Denise should have been nominated. I do think like Audiard and Mangold should have definitely probably been out of here. But again, I still think it's one that he should have been nominated for. But I was more surprised in 2021 because you just mentioned it. Outside of Nickel Boys, movies like Conclave. I do think this year of nominees and this year's of movies, Oscar and award movies in general, is at a much higher caliber than it was when Dune Part 1 came out. So, like, while I was still a little upset that Denis didn't get nominated, it made a little bit more sense aside from the fact of what they did choose. Because, again, I don't think A Complete Unknown or Emilia Perez really needed to be there.
I think the Academy is just blind as fuck. And I don't know what they watched when they watched Dune Part 2 because this movie has so much going for it. And like the whole journey, like the fact that this movie is almost 3 hours long. And like to me, it just feels like a whirlwind like roller coaster. Like I'm on the ride the entire I feel like I'm riding a sandworm like the entire time with like Paul like on this journey. Like I don't know, I'm mesmerized the entire time. There's not 1 second I've watched this film I think like 3 or 4 times now, and I guess 4.5 because I watched half of it before we recorded this. But like every time I watch it, I'm just like so like mesmerized and like fascinated with like this world. Like I like not that I would want to like grow up on Arrakis, but like I don't know. I mean, it looks pretty cool. The Fremen look like some cool ass people to kind of hang out with, but I mean, some of them are a little kooky. But I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think about like we got to dive in more into like the world of the Fremen, the Harkonnen, and I guess more lore a little bit. I guess with the Atreides, would you guys say?
I will leave y'all real quick with my disgusted face of why Denis not getting nominated because I got to make sure my computer does. But this is how I felt.
All right.
Go get that charger. I know, Katie, what do you think though? Like,
I agree with you. I could, when it was over, I was like, let's go again. Like, put it on again. I could watch it back to back. I adored it. I love diving in deeper to the lore. And usually I find that stuff difficult to follow. Like with fantasy and sci-fi, it's like too many names, too many places. But with Dune, I find myself just like remembering names and places and people, and I wouldn't usually keep up with that kind of stuff. And I love that the visual aspects of it stand up to the lore and the performances stand up to that. And yeah, it's all just like the highest caliber.
No, and that's fair. Okay, he's back. Perfect timing. Real quick. I want to dive into more of these supporting roles, especially two that we haven't really spoken on all that much, but one plays a major part and one not as much, but the specter of this character is out there, and that's Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken as the Emperor and his daughter. Their names are slipping me right now because of cold. My apologies. But yeah, what are your thoughts? I'm going to start with Katie on this one. Thoughts on those two characters?
I love Florence Pugh in every context. I thought she was great. She wasn't given loads to work with, but I think she did really well with what she did have, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of her. Christopher Walken was Christopher Walken, and he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know. I'm not convinced he knew. If you asked him about his character, he doesn't know anything. He just was reading and it was fine. It's Christopher Walken. I like Christopher Walken, but I think it was just him reading a script, and I couldn't stop seeing Christopher Walken just in the Dune film. I was like, why is Christopher Walken here? It's just, I didn't feel he was playing much of a character.
To be fair,
do you know whether or not he's in it or not is a good thing or a bad thing? That is my worst Christopher Walken impression that I try to do anytime.
I couldn't even tell. That just seemed like you.
Yeah.
To be fair, outside of Severance, in the last 5 or so years, one hasn't a Christopher Walken performance just been Christopher Walken.
And is that a bad thing?
Exactly. Is it a bad thing though? Like, I don't know.
Took me out of it. It just made me think like somehow Christopher Walken has ended up here. He's walked through a weird portal and he's just there.
I actually would agree with you on that. Yeah, he was the one moment where I was like, I'm gonna accept this because it's Christopher Walken. It's like almost anytime Nicolas Cage showed up, that might have been a step too far if it was Cage. But like when he shows up, you're like, okay, I'll deal with it because I love the man. But yeah, he's definitely the old man walking in like, where the fuck am I right now? Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and cash his check.
Well, I kind of think it works for the character though, if you think about it more or less in the sense, because like, yes, he like, I don't know, like he, even though he's the Empire, like he feels bad kind of for the situation that occurred because he did set up like the secret hit on Paul Atreides' father. But in reality, obviously it was the Bene Gesserit that like kind of convinced him to do all of it. So like him taking all this pressure, like, wow, someone that I like, Florence Pugh says it, like like her father considered him like a son, kind like he treated him like a son, kind of like. It was very surprising that like he called out this like secret hit on him, but in reality, it was more or less like the Bene Gesserit, obviously like in the background, like they always are, playing games, moving chess pieces around, and like this was just all part of their plan. And so like when shit kind of like does come to reality, like and hits him in the face, it's just he realizes like, wow, I did fuck up. Like,
and speaking of the Bene Gesserit, Princess Irulan is a member of the Bene Gesserit, which is part of why towards the end you have her just essentially stepping like, I'll marry you, and you want to go back to a black woman motherfucker face. That moment was ooh.
Yes.
I'm very curious to see this in Dune Messiah, like how this plays out, because I've seen the original Dune film, like,
Paige,
and like Jessica.
I can tell you now because you don't get to see how it plays out. It's just there's a massive time jump and everything.
Well, that's why I'm curious though, because Denis already taken so many liberties. Like I'm so curious what he does, because I know what happens in Messiah.
Something like that. There's not going to be as many liberties taken because there's already going to be 2 children born between Paul and Chani.
Well, let's not spoil anything. But
I have no idea what's coming, so thank you.
Sorry, it's a book. I'm sorry, I read it.
No, but I do think that's like the weaker story is Dune Messiah, so that's why I think he will be taking.
No.
I don't know. I haven't read it. That's just what I've heard.
Everything after Messiah is what's considered.
Okay. But I think a lot of people are going to be upset.
That is the main reason. Denny has said after Messiah, I'm out, because after this it gets weird. It gets even more weird. You can lose an audience, and just he doesn't want to deal with it because he thinks everything after it is, well, not good. Also, speaking of which, should mention that there are rumors that Gareth Edwards will take over the series once Denny's done.
I did see that, but I don't think the main cast will probably stick around for that.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
Last thing I'll say about Walken and Pugh is that I did appreciate that they always had scenes together. So even when Walken was taking you out, Florence would bring you back in because she is great at everything.
Yeah, she is great and everything, and that's why I'm very much looking forward to see the. It's not really a love triangle, but at the same time, it is because Paul's not really interested in
it's
Dune
curious
Messiah.
because like Jessica, like his mother Jessica was like his father's what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah,
Mistress.
mistress. Like, and so kind of like
It's Chani is plays the same
Chani
role.
is like the same thing. Like he's the one she loves, but he has to be with someone else.
Yes,
I don't know.
but it's very much plays in the political aspects of real life where you or even you just marry someone for the purpose of political gain and things like that, and there's no love there, like arranged marriages. Then a lot of those marriages still have like a mistress or two on the side of women they actually care about.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm just so curious. Like the way the movie ended, like to me, I was just like, it made me want so much more. Like this movie could have ended, and they could have been like, "This is it." But like the way it ends, like there's so much more stakes to like be told and stuff that I'm so curious. Like I don't know. What did you guys think of the end before we kind of think of like how you're feeling about what can be next and such like that? I guess.
I was in the same spot you were. Yeah, like I wanted to continue into the story. I was very happy that I actually haven't read the books or anything. I'm a big proponent of separating the movies from the books, whether I've read them before or after. And it's just a lot easier when you don't read the books first. So it made me want more. It made me want to continue with these characters to see where it's going. And it makes me not want to hear any more spoilers for the rest of the daggone time we're here.
Matt. But it's also too like, I mean, yeah, I could have watched like another 45 minutes of this movie, even though it was already at like the 3-hour mark. But like we can spoil it, guys, like what happens at the end. Like we found out a lot of shit about like kind of Paul's like ancestry kind of in a sense, which I thought was interesting. So I don't know, Kate, if you wanted to take that.
No, I'm been meaning to read the books forever, but I'm gonna just wait because it's really exciting going into it not knowing what's gonna happen. And even if there are like book spoilers, you never know how it will be handled on the screen. But yeah, I loved how it just finished with Zendaya, and I can't wait to see what she does in the next film. I haven't read the book, so it's all completely open from my perspective what could happen.
Yeah, Paul is like next level now. I feel like he kind of went like, but like he not like he lost it, but like kind of like the power has taken over him so much that like,
and it's the one thing he said he wouldn't do to Zendaya. Yeah. So
exactly, the one thing he didn't want to become is what he ended up becoming at the end. Because like finding out that like he is also part Harkonnen too. Like he is part of like the Bene Gesserit kind of in a sense because of his mother.
Jesuit.
Like, Jesuit. Sorry, guys. I can't say it like that. And then obviously he's part of like the powerful house of the Atreides. So like this guy has so much power, but he never wanted it in the beginning. And now that it's all been thrust upon him, that like I don't know if it's that he doesn't know how to handle it or he's just like, I don't know, like, because it's not like he's making the best of the situation. Like, hey guys, I'm trying to make peace with all of this. Like, I have all the power now. Listen to me. He's like very stern with like the power, like kind of overcoming him. I don't know.
I think he's kind of embracing it. I think that's how it's going to get more sinister, and we'll see darker and darker sides of his character because I think he's pretty much embracing it at this point, and he's going to run with it.
I'm looking forward to, since you mentioned it, but this is fine. I actually think it will be really, really interesting to jump into a time jump and see where they're at after with that relationship. I think that's a good choice. I would also like to see whether or not Denis adds a little bit things in between just because he's a great storyteller. So like maybe not a huge like direct aftermath, but like taking small liberties to kind of build to that time jump. That'd be interesting to see.
I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion considering what I know about the next book.
Yep. Don't say it. Don't do it.
But with that, folks, I think we've covered essentially everything we need to cover about Dune Part 2. So if you're watching this, please remember to give this video a like and a thumbs up, but also check out the other films coming out in the series. We're starting this off with a Best Picture primer leading into the Oscars. And then following, it's just going to be your bigger films that, a few days after they come out. So people have the time to watch them and taking a bigger bite into those stories and our thoughts on those. But with that, you can find these good folks all on Bitesize Breakdown, and you can find me personally here on A Bigger Bite, but also my personal YouTube channel, Watt Real Entertainment, so go check that out there. And signing off, I am Matt, that is Katie, that is Paige, and that punk down there is Amaru, and we will see you next time. Nickel Boy sucks. Peace.